My name is Draxtor. Today on the show, Tom Hillenbrand, first ever German author to come on this show, possibly the last one. We'll see. His latest thriller is Montecrypto, and Montecrypto dives deep into the world of digital currency, digital currencies and payment systems, not only Bitcoin, but as I've said on my social media for the last week, that the currency at the center of the story reminds me a little bit of the Linden dollar. So this should be a really, really interesting conversation. Second Lifers are, of course, familiar with virtual currencies. Also, today we will have an initial coin offering of the Drex coin. You actually see it. You see it littered around on the floor. But on the table, as per usual, the Tom's book, Montecrypto, and a few other books, Drone State and Hologrammatica. We will also talk about translation because, unfortunately, the only book of Tom's that's available in English is Drone State. But there are negotiations, I would imagine, of Montecrypto being translated, and there are sample translations also available online. And the book takes place, of course, in the world of crypto bros and gals and tech bros. In the book, a Silicon Valley hotshot wunderkind star who started in anarcho-capitalism. I looked this up on Wikipedia and will explain what that is. He started with a Bitcoin venture, then quote unquote sold out, went big with a more traditional payment system. In the book, he dies in a plane crash, and a private detective gets hired by his sister to find out if he, in fact, had a treasure somewhere, a stash hidden away in bitcoins. And the sister of Greg Hollister, that Silicon Valley hotshot, hires Ad Dante, a private eye, to find this treasure or find out if it even exists. Now, before I welcome Tom here, I just want to make clear that I would consider myself a no coiner. This is a term that appears in the book. I was not aware what that means, but now I have an identity. I am a no coiner, but I don't want to um, have this show devolve into snark and cynical attitudes towards people who believe in Bitcoin. Uh, but if you are in the audience, if you're pro Bitcoin or anti Bitcoin, I will look at the chat and you're welcome to, of course, chime in with your dreams, with your concerns. Um, but first of all, let's welcome Tom Hillenbrand to the Second Life Book Club. Welcome, Tom.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Now, you are a vampire, but there are no vampires in your book. Why this avatar? Why this obsession with 80s vampire movies and I guess Kiefer Sutherland to some extent?
Yeah, I just I just thought about okay, if you're going to Second Life and you can be whatever you want to be, I would say I always wanted to be a vampire. I
Mhm.
was a goth kid. I read all those Anne Rice novels and watched Lost Boys and so on. Um, I've kind of as you can see on the photo, I've not a lot of hair left, so no Robert Smith haircut for me these days, but I thought, yeah, okay. If they can get you any avatar you want, then I want fangs, and of course,
And a little bit
a,
of hair.
and a little bit of hair, and a kind of hot Kiefer Sutherland kind of vampire boy
Yeah, and in your Second
look,
Life profile, if
and
people
that
want
worked
to,
out. That I like that.
yeah, you have Kiefer Sutherland in your Second Life profile. If people want to befriend Tom, they will see it. Now, before we get into discussion, I we need to define a few terms. Now, I mentioned no coiner in the context of the book. The main protagonist at Dante is this private detective. He's also an alcoholic, of course. I guess all detectives are. I don't know. I'll ask you about these tropes too. But he doesn't understand. I think he says that he doesn't really understand Bitcoin, but he's also just really too skeptical to buy into it, whatever. So he encounters this young woman, and she says, "Ah, I knew that you were a no coiner." Now, what is a no coiner, Tom?
Well, a no coiner is simply put someone who doesn't have any bitcoins
Ah,
or other cryptocurrencies for that matter, and who's still in quotation marks stuck in the old paradigm of boring treasuries and blue chip stock and whatever your broker throws at you, and will not sort of be part of the future. That
uh-huh.
is that is the idea. I mean, it's very much about, and I think we will talk about this more, but being in Bitcoin is not just an investment decision, but it's also a political decision, and it's an article of faith, really, to say I'm a coiner or I'm a no coiner.
I was not aware how passionate, let's use that term, the Bitcoin community is. I stepped into a little bit of a thing yesterday on Twitter because member of Congress Rashida Tlaib tweeted the hashtag mint the coin, which had nothing to do with Bitcoin. Maybe we'll address this as well because it has more to do with modern monetary theory. But a lot of Bitcoiners jumped on this thread, and I and
You bet.
I was attacked. It was unbelievable, and it was actually a little bit uh, sad by this woman from El Salvador who was very passionate. She says she was poor, she didn't have any opportunity, and then she got into Bitcoin, and now she can sort of survive and thrive. Um, Now, two more definitions before we get started with the discussion, and maybe with a reading too to get a little feel. But the other, what is Bitcoin? Because this is also something that people are very um, confused about. And let me just say, I think what I know about Bitcoin, and I don't want you to get like into the whole uh, technical minutia here, but what people are proposing to use Bitcoin for is to use it as a currency, and that is my personal problem because of the volatility. I think any person who would like to know that a sandwich costs the same on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday may have issues with Bitcoin as a currency, but it's also an investment opportunity. But so how, if I were to ask you what is Bitcoin, how would you answer that?
It's a currency, and or a store of value. It's an asset. Let's say it's an asset um, that exists without any central control or any central bank. Every other currency will have a central bank that prints it. With Bitcoin, all this act of minting the currency or minting the coins and controlling it and keeping track of who has how many coins is not done by any central authority, but it's done by the internet. It's kind of the same as when you had um, these music exchanges like Napster,
Hmm.
and the sort of the genius or the horrific thing, depending on your point of view, with Napster was that there was no longer one server where those Britney Spears records resided.
Hmm.
It was all sort of atomized all over the internet, and if someone stole the record, you could not get to him. You couldn't find out where the server was. And it's the same with Bitcoin. There is no, you can't really take the system apart because it consists of thousands and thousands of nodes and people who keep the system alive. That is one thing. It's not central. And the other thing is normally if you exchange money or goods with someone else, you need some kind of trust. Um, so the other person doesn't cheat you. And in Bitcoin, you don't need to know the other person that sends you money or you get money from, and you don't need an intermediate that checks that this is really a credit card that exists and so on. All this is done through cryptography. So someone, this alleged Japanese guy, Satoshi Nakamoto, invented a system that doesn't need no central bank, that doesn't need no trusted intermediaries,
Let me
that
stop you right
doesn't,
there.
yeah, right.
This is what I don't get really. I mean, with the trust thing, because you're talking about a Japanese guy who nobody knows if he ever existed, who created Bitcoin, and all the Bitcoin proponents, they all talk about. I mean, let's paint a little bit with a broad brush. They're all of one shade of sort of the government is too big, too oppressive. We want more freedom. And as you put it, they talk about trust, but I don't understand how you can trust this thing when you don't know where it's coming from and there is zero regulation. The scariest thing that phone support people can tell you is, oh, it's an automated process, right? I mean, this is I don't know.
No, it's. I mean, it's. That's sort of the paradox of the whole thing is, you can't trust anyone involved in it, but you, on the other hand, you don't have to. That's, I mean, that's the beauty of cryptography. If I tell you, I have a cryptographic system to, say, encrypt mails,
Hmm.
um, and you don't believe me, you don't believe that it has a backdoor, it doesn't have a backdoor, that the NSA isn't listening in, and so on. Um, then I can say, okay, of course you don't trust me. Why should you trust me? Don't trust, verify. Here is the source code. Look at the code, and then you can see, whether I'm pulling your leg or whether it's genuine.
Yeah, if I
And
have
that's
someone who understands code, I know I'm going all over the place, but because then
right, right. Of course, of course. But
that's what people
that's
say also here in the
yeah.
local chat. Damon says every person can look at the code that runs Bitcoin, so there's no need for trust. I would push back on that. I would say, well, a lot of Bitcoiners talk about, leveling the playing field and making this also, something where people who are disenfranchised or marginalized can be at the table. And I would say I don't know if these people who are marginalized and disenfranchised have a degree in information technology and even understand that code. And who guarantees me that that code can't be hacked and all this kind of stuff?
But at least you can, someone can look at the code and could vouch for it. I mean, there is a high level of transparency here. Every
Hmm.
transaction that has ever been done, you don't know if A gave 2 Bitcoin to B, on the 1st of March. It's in the ledger. It's in the database, and you can look at it. You don't know who A is, you don't know who B is, but you know that the transaction took place, and it's almost impossible to forge that. Um,
According to whom?
uh, According to mathematics.
Mm, okay.
Um, but that's not sort of that's not really, that's solving. I mean, the Nakamoto guy has done some amazing work and solved some problems. But of course, there's other bigger problems, of human greed, um, and human duplicity, and human ingenuity when it comes to fucking other people over, that he didn't think
Hmm.
of. So
How
it,
surprising. Hmm.
yeah, of course. It's like, for instance, uh, th- there is a few big, companies, mining companies, that mint these new bitcoins, and no one knows who's behind those companies. That's for
That's
one part
that.
of it
Yeah.
that's really shady.
Yeah.
So
So that the intermediary, the middleman that sort of plants itself in the middle. Tom, I just want to make sure that I'm, I just
we're
became
getting
aware.
kind of technical here.
No, no, I'm just aware also that I'm kind of grilling you, like I'm holding you
Yeah, it's okay.
personally responsible for all the flaws of Bitcoin. And we have a whole bunch of really good comments. Let me get through these comments real quick. Lysithia, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, says, I'm not sure that I see a real difference between trusting an unseen credit card clearinghouse to validate your card and trusting an unseen crypto system to validate your Bitcoin. Damon, of course, here says, what does he say? It's 2021. I don't know how to code. It's 2021. Learn the basics. Um, Now this is a really big subject matter, and I also want to get to the book, so we will not be able to exhaust this topic. One of the big questions that I want to actually ask Tom is, uh, again, Bitcoin may be an interesting investment possibility, but I want to ask a very straight question, Tom. Do you see, after you've done the research for the book, do you see Bitcoin at this point as a viable replacement for currency or an alternative to an actual currency? And again, with currency, we mean a means to operate our daily purchasing needs, basically a cup of coffee, I don't know, gas for the car or whatnot. So I think these are the two things that are often thrown into sort of one bag. And I personally don't have a problem if people want to sort of go to Vegas and gamble and make some money. That's fine. But to sort of pretend that this is something that is stable and will replace the money that we use now, euro, dollars, yen, whatever. I think that's frankly delusional.
Well, I think uh, for one, for this is the sort of from the basic structure to have a digital currency that can be forged and where all transactions are transparent. Um, that's a pretty neat idea. But I also believe that whatever kind of digital currency we'll be using in 10 years' time, it probably won't be Bitcoin. Simply because if you, without getting into the technical details, if you look at some of the other cryptocurrencies, um, you see the same phenomenon that you have with many um, internet or tech innovations. The first one there isn't the one to win. MySpace isn't around, right?
Mm.
MySpace is no longer around, and I
It
think
was bought by Justin Timberlake, but that's
yeah, but
besides
I
the
think
so,
oh god, maybe he will buy Bitcoin, but I think Bitcoin will at some point probably become irrelevant simply because other people have sort of built on the idea and refined it on, and for instance, found a way to do all this cryptographic stuff without blowing lots of CO2 into the atmosphere, which is a huge problem with Bitcoin. So someone will just update the idea and come along with something else. I think, I mean, and that is something that is, I
but you're
believe,
saying
yeah,
basically that digital currency or the way to just have digital transactions, again, this is something that is pretty much inevitable. I hear you saying, and I'm personally not opposed to it. As a matter of fact, in the book, I think you're doing a fantastic job uh, in with the plot to differentiate between Moneta, which is a digital payment system in the book that is tied backed by the U.S. dollar. So that means if there's sort of a run on the bank, the company that runs Moneta in your fictional story here in your world um, has to be able to actually pay people uh, pay people out in dollars, and the same is true for the Linden dollar. I mean, the Linden dollar here in Second Life is an example of is an incredible success story of of a virtual currency that there's transactions to the tune of $50 million every single day with microtransactions, and it works. And Linden Lab has global compliance. They have a subsidiary that handles that. That's fundamentally different from, again, a cryptocurrency where it's just not that stable. I guess I'm sort of harping on the stability thing. The environmental issue is, I think, also a huge issue, but the main issue that I see is the stability. Yeah.
of course. I mean, you could argue that that is just sort of a passing thing and it will stabilize and so on. Um, but what I'd like to get back to is when you talk. I think when you talk to the average kind of consumer that isn't very tech savvy, um, d- people wonder why can I send uh, a GIF of a dancing cat to my friend in Tokyo, and he has it 2 milliseconds later. And
Hmm.
now try sending $5 to the same guy.
Yeah, no, good point.
It's
Absolutely.
and why is it not as seamless and as easy to do? And um, and I think that's one of the reasons that there's a huge uptake in these cryptocurrencies, because people just want that kind of functionality.
Right.
And the woman from El Salvador you talked to is of course someone who maybe wasn't bankable before, who didn't have a bank account, didn't have a checking account, didn't have a credit card, um, and probably had a hard time if she say has a brother or a husband in the United States to get to the
The
remittances
remittance
without
payments. This is an
yeah
ex. This,
without deductions. And for her this might
yeah.
be, of course, if the value fluctuates that much, then it's shit. um, but the sort of the cutting of the fees and the red tape and so on, that is something that people are interested in. So
You're making a good point. Maybe you're telling me by the end of the hour you're making me a pro coiner from a no coiner. No, I mean this is I agree 100%. I'm not here obviously to defend the banks and exorbitant fees for international transfer. The remittance issue, people earning money overseas in the U.S. and then sending it home to, less developed countries to their family. This is where they get quite exploited by these these banks that do international transfers. I want to run through a few comments here because Vulcan was saying something interesting. Vulcan says, let me scroll back here. What did Vulcan say? You can reason that way around and say that if there's something wrong with the Bitcoin code, it's very unlikely that no one will find it. So this is in response to everybody can look at the code. Vulcan is saying that issues can creep into the code and nobody will be able to detect it. I think that's a pretty good point. Damon is saying, yes, add up the energy of every single server computer used in Visa, MasterCard. Right now, it makes Bitcoin look not so bad. So this is a legitimate point. We can look at statistics in terms of the
no,
environmental issue. No, go
I
ahead.
would, I don't have the exact figure, but the, uh, the payment and settling systems of Mastercard or Visa are incredibly efficient, um, and the amount of energy you need for one Bitcoin transaction is roughly the amount of energy you need for a billion Visa card transactions.
Hmm.
So, but I mean, in a way, it's logical because uh, Bitcoin is a system without oversight, without policing, without uh, intermediaries. So you need that extra computation and that extra energy to keep it safe. That's just the way it is. I mean, but you could say there's other advantages of the system. So you just have to be content with this extra energy consumption. I'm not sure that's true, but you could certainly see it that way. But it's not energy efficient uh, in any comparison to any other payment system on the planet.
I have to throw my whole run sheet out, and I should have known because this is a wonderful, engaging discussion here, moving very organically. If you're just tuning in on Facebook, Twitter, actually, I don't have Facebook open. If somebody has Facebook open and wants to feed me some questions, please direct message me. I'm looking at the YouTube questions. And here local, the guest that we have lured into the Second Life Book Club today is Tom Hillenbrand from Germany, my home country. Wonderful, very prolific author. We'll get into his massive output. Maybe he can share some tips how to put out so much awesome stuff and have children at the same time. I don't know how many housekeepers he has that he pays in Bitcoin. But hey, I just came up with that on the fly. Chili
Right.
is saying in the local chat, if Linden Lab believed they would turn Linden dollars into a blockchain secured venture. Now, this is a different thing. We'll get into this a little later. Stella is saying something interesting. If Linden Lab believed in virtual currency completely, they would accept virtual money for premium group fees and tiers, wouldn't they? That's a good point. There's a little bit inside baseball. Linden Lab does not currently allow Linden dollars to be paid for those services. You have to use dollars, but yeah, well, maybe we'll touch on that in the post game with questions. I want to throw up a slide here, slides as always, and research prepared by Shyla, because we've been talking about El Salvador, and El Salvador is switching to Bitcoin. um, they have Bitcoin ATMs. So I just threw up this slide here, and the service provider is a company called Chivo. Now I haven't really looked into this. It's really interesting. Here's all these brand new ATMs to be shipped out to El Salvador. What I do know is I read an excellent book by David Sherrard, who is booked for next year here on the book club. He wrote a book called Attack of the 50-Foot Blockchain, and he has a comment on his blog. It's an excellent book that also chronicles some of the scandals of the middleman that Tom mentioned. But David on his blog is commenting on the developments in El Salvador, and I'm bringing up the slide. So let me read this. He says Chivo could be a good idea. Chivo, the provider of Bitcoin-based payment systems, a national payment system with government backing, public kiosk, helpful customer service, staff at the kiosks, get money moving faster, stimulate the economy, stuff that everybody wants. Trust is key, though. People worry about money. A new payment system must show itself to be solid and build itself a reputation as being solid. So far, we haven't had a pile of crooks coming in to clean their dirty bitcoins because Chivo's functionality and customer service are unusable. So what he's saying, it's so unusable, even the criminals wouldn't use it. And David goes on saying, if you want Salvadorians to hate everything about Bitcoin and electronic payment systems in general, this is a good way to get there. Do you have any comment, Tom, on this development of an entire nation state adopting this, or attempting to make this huge leap?
My and I haven't looked into this very closely, but my kind of theory is that maybe the autocratic president of El Salvador is trying to find a way to get at all these remittance dollars that are pouring into his country.
Hmm.
And one way of doing that is um, that he would say, okay, you give us all the dollars and you get these coins in exchange. Don't worry, we're good for it. you know?
Yeah,
Um,
this is
that,
something that we talk.
yeah.
Sorry to jump in here, but this is, I think, I just want to make this point is, technology. Everybody here in the audience, I'm sure, is interested and enthusiastic about technology and all this kind of stuff. But we should always keep in mind that if technology is not evenly distributed, it helps nothing. It just cements that kind of power structure, and especially in an autocratic situation, it solves absolutely nothing.
And that is something I when I get into fights with all these Bitcoin people, because I do, is that one of the promises of Bitcoin was supposed to be, okay, it's egalitarian and everyone will profit from it, and especially people in developing countries will profit from it.
Yeah.
But if you look at the list of the 20 or 30 richest Bitcoin billionaires in the world, um, it's kind of striking that they're all kind of young and
Hmm.
they're all male and white. So that's kind of, I mean, that's
Yeah.
it seems like it's just perpetuating the status quo
Yeah, and why
in a
shouldn't
sense.
it? If you have access to these machines, it goes back to my earlier point here. Now let's I got my producer in the ear. The producer is anxious to show us around the scene a little bit, because people who are not in the room, they don't even know what's going on. So a couple things. First of all, we are here in the man cave, which is also a gigantic mansion. But in your book Montecrypto, it's called the man cave. Greg Hollister's man cave is actually a huge mansion in Malibu in LA on a beachfront property. If the camera could zoom out a little bit, you can see sort of the wide view of this mansion. And I read the book and I was like, hey, where should we have this show? Should we have it on sort of a huge modern uh, modern villa that you see in Bel Air? And I was like, I don't know if somebody sells this stuff in Second Life. Okay, that's another inside joke. There, I think out of the 1 million digital assets and objects and 3D offerings on the Second Life marketplace, sometimes I think 20% are huge mansions. So the camera is zooming around a little bit. We also have a DeLorean from Back to the Future, decked out Back to the Future style. We have that in the living room because that's also something that Greg Hollister, the not the hero, but the main protagonist who is dead. Um, the
The main
beginning,
protagonist
the
who is
main
dead,
protagonist is
right?
dead. News, yeah, I'm sorry, this is spoiler alert. Who hid the treasure, or maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't have a treasure. He hid it before he died, but then mysterious videos appear. He has a DeLorean in his living room. There's also a huge statue of the cover of Atlas Shrugged, which is a must read by Ayn Rand. I'm joking. I don't think it's a must read. I think Ayn Rand is fairly incoherent, but I'm sure people in the local chat will correct me uh, very, very shortly. Then we have a castle here standing around, which is supposed to be made by Warhammer. The our Bitcoin bro superstar is a big fan of what do you call that? These figurines. I mean, not Warhammer is the brand, but the type of activity, like in German, it's
It's
Sinfigur.
tabletop gaming, wargaming, miniature
Ah, yeah,
wargaming. Yeah.
that's what they love. And in the first row, we actually have Greg Hollister, who you described as and maybe the camera can zoom into him. And I asked you, how does your protagonist in your book, how does he look? How do you envision him? And you said it's a mixture of Jack Dorsey, founder and CEO of Twitter, mixed with Rumpelstiltskin. And then I looked up the latest Jack Dorsey picture, and he actually does look like Rumpelstiltskin. So it's not even a mixture, because I think after his latest retreat, he just adopted that look, right? I mean, without the hair, I guess. Um, Jack Dorsey did.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. Uh, Lastly, and Tom, then I'll turn it back to you. Lastly, today we have Drex coins. It's the initial coin offering. And I would like to say to Ruby, our production assistant here and set builder, she built all this. Ruby, if you could make it rain right now, camera, please look at us. Camera, turn around, look at us, and the
Oh yeah.
coins are coming down. There you go. I hope the camera caught that. So those are all Drax coins. Um,
This is what is known in crypto jargon as an airdrop.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wait.
it's like to entice people to sort of get into your new coin. It's like if you have created an account or a wallet until 1st of October, you will participate in the airdrop. That's what they do.
Ah, this is just. Well, we're trying. Well, I'm trying to learn. I invited Tommy so I can learn and I can formulate a informed opinion. We haven't defined anarcho-capitalism, so I'm just bringing up this slide, and then it's time for Tom to read. This is an educational programming, Tom, so we do a lot of research. Um,
It's
why?
like NPR on drugs.
Absolutely. Um, what does anarcho-capitalism have to do with this, Tom?
Narco capitalism.
Anarcho-capitalism, not
Anarcho capitalism. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
not
Okay. Oh,
narco.
now I was on the completely on the
Narco-capitalism.
narco capitalism.
That
Yeah.
sounds
Well,
interesting.
there might be. Well,
People
of
go
course,
like, is
there
it
is a connection
420
there
yet?
too, but we
Mhm.
leave that aside. Anarcho capitalism. Well, I mean the I said this before. To a large degree, this isn't a currency. This isn't sort of a cryptographic thing. First and foremost, to me, this is a political project. Bitcoin
Hmm.
is,
Hmm.
um, because here were a couple of guys who came from the libertarian corner, let's say, um, and who said, "What if we could produce or create our own currency with no central bank to influence it, with no politicians to influence it, um, which is completely anonymous. So the state can no longer tax us. Um, then we would be basically free of the state because we take away the most powerful sort of economic weapon that the state has, monetary policy. And if we
Hmm.
take that away from them, we basically we become invisible to the state. We become non-taxable, and then it's just sort of that's not even laissez-faire capitalism. That's just
No.
capitalism without the state. Um,
We
and
had a neighbor in Santa when we lived in the Santa Cruz region. He didn't pay federal taxes. There's a lot of people like that in the
right,
U.S.
um,
And he said, "I live in my own country. I don't have to pay federal taxes until they come and took him to jail. Unfortunately, fortunately, there was no shootout. But go ahead.
yeah, but that's kind of the thinking where the idea for Bitcoin came from, and so so this is of course linked to anarcho-capitalism. I mean, this is sort of even the libertarian people would probably say, okay, let's have uh, just have a basic state that sort of guarantees property rights and nothing else.
And roads.
Uh, and maybe you
Lycia
can
says here
you can privatize those roads.
that's right.
No one needs, yeah, right. So uh, but the people to the I don't know there's people in one corner of the libertarian spectrum which would say, now that's diluting pure thought here. We don't need any central government at all, and we will just use cryptography and computers to make that dream come true. And that is essentially where Bitcoin came from.
Mhm.
And a lot of the people that are into Bitcoin really believe that Bitcoin is going to transform not just the economy, but the whole uh, politics and the sort of do away with the nation state. And even they will go so far as to tell you Bitcoin will be the end of wars
Mhm.
because if the state doesn't have any money to invest in an army, can't go to
Mhm.
war.
And that's
Case closed.
no, I mean, thank you. You put this really well, Tom, because I think the last point is also something where a lot of my lefty progressive friends, frankly, in my humble opinion, fall prey to this argument. Um, and it is ideologically a project of where I think the left progressives should not be aligning themselves with the other side. But that's my
Someone
personal
just
opinion.
brought up Peter Thiel
Oh
in
yeah,
the chat. Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Talking about crazy people, crazy. Talking about crazy rich people. Yeah. What is Peter
Crazy
Thiel up
rich
to?
German people. Yes, kind of German, sort of.
I think, yeah, he might have joined. But Peter Thiel is, I don't know where that project is going, but he was proposing this for a while. These floating cities that are owned by the people and are basically their own countries with their own laws and
I mean, and that goes back to I don't know if you guys have heard about it. It's also in the book. It goes back to the Republic of Minerva in the 70s.
hmm
Some rich American, of course, from Vegas, of course,
hmm
who had a very libertarian streak, planted a flag somewhere in a small island near, I think, near Tonga. and declared his own floating city state and printed his own money. So to have a anarcho-capitalist libertarian state. I think his name was Michael Oliver.
I just brought it
Um,
in here on the local
hmm
chat from the wiki, and I'm trying to upload the map here. Yeah, so this is not new stuff. So in basically every 20, 30 years, a guy who got rich either in gambling or tech will propose sort of these ideas, I guess. Um, oh boy, we're 20 minutes before we end the show, so I think we have to
Right.
go over at least 30 minutes. I know Tom's like, I want to go to bed. No, this is enough. Um, Now we'll roll in the post game. We'll roll in into the regular stream, and we'll stick with the original time. Chili says, "Let's talk about the book." That's great, Chili. Thank you. You earned your $10 Linden that I gave you earlier to prompt this, and magically a book stand will actually appear right now. And I would like to ask Tom to stand up and approach this book stand here that has magically appeared and disappeared, and now it appeared again. Um, Montecrypto, I set up the uh, story earlier, and Tom will read from the very beginning of the book, where Ed Dante, that's the private eye, is hired by Jackie Martel or Martel, who's the sister of the crypto bro who died in a plane crash. Um, Let me adjust the book stand. You can stand right there, Tom. All good. No, no, no. Keep standing. That's good. I'll adjust the book stand. That's cool. And yeah, so we'll start in the beginning where Jackie hires Ed, and she sort of lays out what the issue is. And Ed, I think what we need to say is that Ed is a former banker, and he's in his mid 40s, and he'll mention that he is just not a techie, and he doesn't even understand anything about this kind of stuff, and he doesn't understand why Jackie's hiring him to
Right,
find
and
a hidden
he's
treasure.
working as a PI, and he's British, and he's for some reason stuck in Los Angeles.
Right, we don't even know that. And later I'll ask you what up with all these cliches, Tom. And I don't know why Ed is not German. Ed should be German, as judgmental as he is, but he's a great character. So
Okay,
let's read.
you know what kind of private detective I am, Jackie? I think so. You want to know if I think he was killed? If if that's what you believe and you're looking for someone to pursue that hypothesis, then I'm probably not the right person, Dante replies. She takes off her cap and runs her fingers through her hair. No, that's not what I believe. It was an accident, no doubt about it. I'm concerned about his finances. That's your specialist area, right? On Dante's business card, it says financial forensics. It's printed in quite bold letters, but then understatement doesn't get you a long way in Los Angeles. Forensics usually involves going through credit card statements, or copies of invoices to prove that the villains, usually Hollywood assholes of some kind, have defrauded or otherwise cheated Dante's clients, usually other Hollywood assholes. If you want me to go through his books, then I'm your man. When's the reading of the will? Can I ask what's in it? No idea if he had such a thing. Doesn't matter though. Will, tax declarations, and so on. You can probably get your hands on all of that, but they aren't relevant. Right. I don't quite get it. According to my information, Mr. Hollister's private fortune was over $100 million. More than that, I think. A lot more. Given that rates have gone through the roof over the last months, Dante frowns. But the Dow recently, no ad, not stocks and shares. Crypto. I'm talking about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and the like. Dante nods. Hollister got rich with a payment app called Juno, which pretty much all the millennials seem to use. Martel's half brother was considered a pioneer in the world of digital currencies. In that case, it doesn't seem implausible that he owned large amounts of Bitcoin, Litecoin, Hotcoin, whatever. How much are we talking about? I don't know exactly. A couple of billion, perhaps? Dante tries to keep a poker face. Do you know your way around crypto, Ed? A bit, he lies. She smiles. I don't know much about it either. That was more Greg's thing, not mine. Cryptocurrency is digital, but at the same time, it's like cash. Whoever has the codes has the Bitcoin. Dante thinks for a moment. So the assets we're talking about aren't in a bank account. No. And anyway, it's possible to hack digital banks. Greg was a bit paranoid. He was afraid that someone was going to steal his coins, so he hid the stuff. Online, Dante asks, wondering as he does, so it's even possible to hide digital money offline. No idea. Only one thing is certain. Somewhere there is a huge treasure trove that doesn't appear in Greg's books. I want you to find it for me, Ed. Dante thoughtfully strokes his chin. What are you thinking about, Ed? Why you ask me, for example? I'm the wrong side of 40, Jackie. I know my way around computers a bit, but cryptographic procedures, presumably data that are encrypted 1,000 times over, don't you really need a hacker? Jackie Martell unscrews her puffer stick and brings out a small case. It contains matte black pods. They're affixed to the case with rubber bands like cartridges to a hunting jacket. She chooses one. A moment later, steam is drifting through the living room again. This time it smells of peach. You found the Sandberg fortune, didn't you? That's true, Dante answers. No one knew where the old fool had stored it all away, or that he'd stored anything away, right? Dante shrugs. His foundation lacked cash assets for years. It wasn't hard to find out if you knew how to read a balance sheet. But that was something else. Why? Because Sandberg was over 80. The most modern piece of equipment he had on his desk was a Casio calculator. All the clues that needed finding were analog accounts, books, keys, files, handwritten notes. She smiles. You're making yourself sound even more like the man for the job, although I don't quite get why you're being so standoffish. We haven't even talked about money. Dante could tell her that he's essentially an honest Joe, that he only takes on jobs when he sees a genuine chance of bringing them successfully to the conclusion, that his hesitation is by no means an attempt to wring more money out of her. But who would believe that? What makes you think I'm right for the job? Finding Sandberg's money was an analog treasure hunt, wasn't it? Chasing clues? Dante nods and, against his better judgment, takes another sip from his tea. While Americans have made certain cultural advances where coffee making is concerned, their tea is still wretched. I have, she goes on, little understanding of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, blockchain, and so on, but Greg basically helped to invent all that. Do you know how some people in the scene called him? Hmm? His Holiness, because in their eyes he was the crypto messiah. Dante decides it's best not to comment. Uh, there may be a point on that treasure hunt when you're going to need a hacker. Then you can happily hire one at my expense. But for now, it's more important for me to have someone who's capable of finding treasure. And I have a feeling a lot of things we need to discover about Greg's crypto fortune won't be found in computers. Why is that? Greg programmed his first computer game at 11. At 13, he built a robot and won the NASA Junior Prize with it. He was a hobbyist and a hacker, and he was paranoid. As I've said, you probably don't get one without the other. He was well aware that it's much easier to steal bitcoins than most people are aware. That's why I think he hid the treasure offline. Martel gets to her feet. Pulling a cloud of peach behind her, she walks to a chest of drawers and takes out a small black object. At first, Dante thinks it's another vaporizer, but it's too small for that. Martel comes back and sets the object down on the table in front of him. It's about the size of a Zippo lighter, but it has a small monochrome display. This is a secure wallet, a special container for crypto. Dante picks up the object. He can see two buttons set into the anodized metal. He presses one of them. The display springs to life. Balance 5.48 BTC. As I say, the stuff is like cash. Whoever owns the cryptographic key can spend it, hence these special USB sticks. You need a password for the wallet, or else you can't get at it. Dante is only half listening as he's doing a calculation at the same time. Presumably, the BTC on the display stands for Bitcoin. He doesn't know exactly what the rate is, but it's probably somewhere in the region of 9,000. That means there is about $50,000 in the stick.
And that's Tom Hillenbrand reading from Montecrypto. Big round of applause. This is setting
Thank
the
you.
scene very, very nicely. The skepticism that at Dante, the private eye on the case, has, and also um, the stick. And this is interesting because I have a little quote here from another quote from the book where Ed goes to a crypto conference and he has that stick, that USB stick, with $50,000 on it. And the company that makes that stick is called Hypervolt. And he goes to their booth in the crypto conference here. And there is a woman there, and there's a display of the booth is decorated with guns, or with one big gun. People outside of the U.S. may not be familiar with the libertarian flag, with a yellow flag with a ringed rattlesnake and the words "Don't tread on me" on it. That's also something that is in Dante's mind, and this goes to the point where you were saying this is a um, political project. So let me just read this quote here. Dante goes towards this woman, and here is the excerpt. Dante is stunned by the giant gun in the showcase. The combination crypto and gun, Dante thinks of Hollister's forum account avatar, the flag with the ringed rattlesnake and the words "Don't tread on me." Big wallet, big balls, big gun. These guys are not kidding around. He turns to the woman. Hi, I have one of your USB sticks. It was already set up with password and everything. You should change the password, replies the woman, and secure it somewhere. Dante smiles. I wrote it on a post it note and stuck it behind the monitor. He meant it as a joke, but like many Americans, the woman is not capable of detecting irony. No, don't do that. Create a seed phrase and lock it up like it's expensive jewelry or something. Now, Tom, why am I reading this excerpt? Again, for two reasons. Um, it ties in nicely with money on this USB stick and the security issue, but also I enjoyed your book tremendously. But one thing, the cliche that Americans are irony resistant, that is very a little offensive.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I think, as opposed to Germans who are known for their terrific sense of humor, right?
No, I mean I'm joking a little bit. I mean the in your defense, I have to say the protagonist is British, and I can see
Right.
that
I
from a
mean,
British
that's I
standpoint.
think that's the point that
Yeah.
he's been in the States for quite a long time, but still kind of walking around and thinking, "Oh, you fucking muppets," right? So it's still, um, especially, I mean, especially being in. And I have that every time I'm there. If you're a European, and you're, say, in New York or in Boston, you
Mm.
still have these kind of old worldish reference points. But as soon as you're on the West Coast, it's all gone.
No, I mean you yeah,
It's a strange it's a strange experience.
Actually, I'm bringing this up also to congratulate you because the way you describe sort of the quote unquote lifestyle in the greater LA metropolitan area, all these differences where he lives, and then he goes intersects with these the rich tech folks, and then you go to Silicon Valley, and then you go all over the place. So as the way you depict from his point of view as this British expat and his interaction with California in particular is pretty spot on. So I'm not really offended. Also, I'm not British, but I think Americans have a very sophisticated sense of humor. So I had to pick this out. But let's talk real quick about this whole just real quick about the security aspect because uh, I know we go back and forth, but bitcoins could disappear. And I mean, if you do that, if you put your seed phrase or whatever on a post-it, you lose the post-it, the money's gone forever, right?
If you, I mean, if you lose the seed phrase, yeah, then the money is gone forever. And there's quite a few people out there who are crying into their bed sheets every night because either they spent all the Bitcoin they had on sort of frivolous things when it, they weren't worth a lot, these coins, or they lost their keys, or threw away their old hard disk. Um, and and now they can't get at the $300 million worth of bitcoins they have somewhere. That actually that seems to happen quite often. And another thing that happens,
Somebody, Berrigan says here in
yeah,
the chat, real a millionaire died unexpectedly. His heirs couldn't don't know his Bitcoin password, and all the money's gone.
that was actually, I mean, that story was actually kind of what got me into writing this book. When I heard about this, there was this an heir to the Carnegie Mellon dynasty,
Hmm.
and he wasn't rich, but it's like he had only a couple of million and a trust fund, and but he invested the money he had in Bitcoin, and he got really rich, like 500 million, 600 million. And when he died, um, the money was gone because I mean that's really where it's sort of different from the old world or the old financial system. Normally, when someone dies, the heirs or the lawyers of the deceased will have a way to get to all the assets. And with crypto, that often doesn't work. So that happens quite often. And what
Hmm.
and to me as a European, many things about uh, these libertarians that are into Bitcoin are really weird because when I research these USB sticks um, that have a code, so you can't easily get at the Bitcoins, like every paranoid Bitcoin fan will tell you. I mean, there always is uh, the $5 decryption method, and I think I,
Hmm.
I I mentioned this in the
You
book.
mentioned it in the book. Yeah,
Yeah,
what is
right.
it?
You're right. You just go to the hardware store and buy a hammer,
Mhm,
and then you kidnap the guy who has the codes, and you start smashing his fingers until he divulges the codes.
mhm.
No programming experience necessary.
$5 hammer, all you
Right.
need. Hmm.
So there was uh, this 150 people on Twitter, and they all basically posted the same picture, how to protect your Bitcoin, and it was this USB wallet and a gun. Right? I mean, and I know these are legal, and I know about 2A and everything, but still to someone coming from a country where it is very very hard to even have a gun that you may keep in a locker at a shooting range, let
Mm,
alone take it home, right?
mm.
It's really bizarre. But that seems to be how they roll.
Things are changing in Germany. I don't want to be super cynical and sarcastic about it, but there was a shooting just recently because someone didn't like a mask mandate in a public place. But I
And maybe
digress.
he bought the gun on the dark net
With
and paid
bitcoins.
with Bitcoin.
Yeah, there you go.
So we
Uh,
come full circle. Yeah.
in in the local chat here, Chile recommends to Berrigan a good, useful read. I don't know if that's a real book. Chile, Crypto Asset Inheritance Planning by Pamela Morgan. Damon says a buddy lost 200 bitcoins the way we had discussed with losing I guess password one bitcoin $41. Um, so let me see, where are we time wise? Oh my god. Okay, official, we are out of time, but the producer is yelling in my ear, keep going, keep going. Now we keep mentioning these libertarians and these free thinkers. I just want to throw up this slide here real quick because Ayn Rand, and we have also another Ayn Rand statue here on the table. Ayn Rand is the godmother of a lot of this thinking. And again, I'm no expert on Ayn Rand. I highly recommend the Sewer, Gas, and Electric trilogy book by Matt Ruff, where Ayn Rand is an artificial intelligent fairy contained in a glass, and she's commenting on the stuff that's happening. She was proposing on Wikipedia, it still says laissez-faire capitalism. I think it's much more extreme than that, frankly. Uh, she said if everybody is following their own, self-interest, so self-interest and basically, in a way, narcissism is going to make for a good society. I guess that was her thing. Tom, I don't know why, if there's a question in there. I just wanted to throw it up because we prepared this slide so people can research that and get some context. Again, this is an educational program. But what is more interesting to me, here's another quote from, before we have you read more, here's another quote from your book, an excerpt from your book about cryogenics, because it's funny, you throw in cryogenics in there too. And I don't want to, belabor cliches, but a lot of people, including some of the prominent ones, I think even Peter Thiel, they're
Oh yeah.
also into, cryogenics. So here's a little excerpt because uh, a guy by the name of Emo Patel in your book, who is also involved in this whole treasure, has a company that offers cryogenic services. And for the people who don't know what I'm talking about, you can freeze yourself and then you pay them sort of a subscription fee, and they keep you frozen after you die until technology will be available to thaw you out and make you live again. So that's sort of the
And if that is
cryogenic
too
thing.
expensive for you, you can just have your head frozen.
Exactly. This is the quote. Let me quote the excerpt. Let me read it. Presumably there are plenty, and this is sort of in the voice of Ed Dante, the private eye. Presumably there are plenty of rich morons out there that still fall for Patel's scam. Cryogenic preservation costs a cool $90,000. If that's too expensive for you, you can opt for neurocryopreservation, which apparently means that Dr. Patelstein and his henchmen will cut off your head and freeze it. That saves space, of course, which is why it only costs 50 grand. A bargain, at least if you're swimming in bitcoins, Tesla shares, whatever. Tom, did you research this? Is this actually a thing that
Yes, this
people
is
do?
actually. I mean, this is.
Oh my God.
I didn't. No, no, I haven't. I don't make this kind of shit up. I mean, that is for some reason. Um, this is the kind of the immortality angle or the being reborn angle is very big with many tech people. Um, and it does, of course, have a sort of a religious connotation, but in the end, it springs from the idea that everything is possible through technology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everything will be possible through technology,
It's a
and the kind of and I mean, you can laugh about it. On the other hand, I mean, that's what people like Peter Thiel. I'm not sure whether he's into cryogenics. I think he's more into
drinking
um,
blood and stuff,
life
right?
life prolonging gene therapy and that kind of
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And the idea is that the only reason that we haven't conquered death as of yet is we haven't sort of applied ourselves. We haven't tried hard enough.
Right. We haven't tried hard enough. We haven't brainstormed enough in
And
the
you had I mean, you
boardroom.
had a libertarian presidential candidate in the U.S. A couple of years back who ran on also I'm not making this up. On an he ran on an anti-death platform,
Hmm.
and he drove around the states in a big car um, that looked like a coffin.
Who is?
So
Yeah, I mean, who cannot? Yeah. Arthur
mean,
says he's
these are
nuts, and then he
actual
died.
ideas that are out there. I mean,
Yeah.
but I thought if you have a kind of you said Jack Dorsey meets Rumpelstiltskin, but if you have sort of the kind of techno Bitcoin bro out there, and he's an Ayn Rand fan, he he collects 80s pop culture paraphernalia. He collects manga porn. He's into Ayn Rand. I mean, he's
Oh, I
also
just wanted
got
to
to
say
be
for
into
the record, just
cryogenics.
oh wait a minute.
Yeah, it's just sort of the collection of wacky stuff.
Right. So
Um,
so it's a requirement. So you check all the
yeah,
boxes. If you have
right.
manga porn, then you also got to get your head frozen. I just want to say we're on a moderate region. We don't have manga porn here in the bookshelves, although the decoration is very faithful to your original story. But we do
But
have we actually do have
the manga porn
yeah, go
mentioned is
ahead.
called Bondage Fairies, and it's an actual thing.
Oh boy. I'm sure somebody will start an island in Second Life with exactly that name.
Don't
Damon,
Google it.
are you taking notes, Damon? You're opening that in Second Life. Now, I want to ask the differentiation in the book. This is important, and we touched on it a little bit, but the currency at the core of this story is not a cryptocurrency, the currency called moneta, and I compared it a little bit to the Linden dollar. Of course, the Linden dollar is only working in Second Life, although Linden Lab will make an announcement in a couple of weeks, I was told, about their payment division Tilia, which is handling all the compliance. So they're expanding. This is not it's a little bit of a news flash here that you guys are getting. But can you talk a little bit about the idea or the currency moneta, the payment services that is at the core of the story? This huge company that Greg Hollister founded, which is actually which looks, you know, pretty pretty good. I mean, it's this is something that I think is around the corner. I guess. Can you describe what it
Right.
is and what the difference is? And why don't we just do that? What's the problem with that? Because the Bitcoin folks, of course, think Greg has sold out to the man, because it's controlled by a company and it's backed by that hated dollar.
Right. What Greg Hollister and his company Juno have basically done is create a very slick payment app um, that is easy to use and that kind of takes um, some of the sort of the technical aspects of Bitcoin or the cryptocurrencies, like encryption, and leaves out all the other what we talked about, sort of the political, philosophical stuff, and leaves out the anonymity, and just turns it into a kind of it's a kind of it's Venmo on steroids, kind of.
Hmm.
Um, and the thing about it, and this is also something I didn't make up, but something that exists, is it is what is called a stable coin. So
Ah.
if you have one moneta coin in your digital wallet, you purchased it for $1, and that US dollar goes into a fund the company has where all these dollars are kept, so that the coins, the moneta coins, they are fully backed by US dollars. So if there's a billion moneta in circulation, then there's $1 billion somewhere in an account. That's
Hmm.
that's the idea. That's
And
the
they
idea
have
that.
to have it. Mhm. They
Mhm.
can't gamble with that money. They have to have it as a security. Yeah.
And in
Go ahead.
in real in real life, there's sort of one company that's been in the news lately called Tether that does pretty much the same thing in the US and other countries, where one Tether coin is worth $1, and the other, which no one has heard about, I think, at least in Europe and the US, is uh, the currency of Alipay. Alipay is
Hmm.
the digital payment system of Alibaba, the huge the Amazon of China,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they were also sort of taking in money and giving people digital coins in exchange, and they put all this money into a money market fund, and for a time it was the biggest money market fund on the planet, something to the tune of $4.5 trillion. It was absolutely humongous. It was huge. And at that point, there's a lot of questions, right? Like, what if all those people try to withdraw their money at once?
Yep.
What if uh, someone makes coins without putting dollars or yuan into that fund? Or what if
Or if they
the
take it and gamble it in Vegas, and then the money's
right?
gone, and they have
I
to
mean,
be
the
bailed out.
first thing
Mhm.
the first thing you do if you have $1 billion, you don't let it sit in a bank account, because then
Mhm.
you lose money. But you invest it. If you're very conservative, you invest it in treasuries, but you could also invest it in shitty commercial paper or penny stocks or what have you. So the moment you have that much money in one place, it just becomes a moral hazard. And that's, I mean, that's one of the differences, probably, as far as I understand it, uh, with Linden dollars. They are they have an exchange rate to the dollar,
Mhm.
but
Yep.
it's not pegged.
They have an
It's it it
right.
it can float. So if every everyone who holds Linden dollars now decides to sell, the exchange rate will the value of the Linden dollar will go down.
They will inject
Yeah,
they will inject money back into the system in a way. The Linden dollar or Second Life is also a little bit, I guess, a petri dish from modern monetary theory, because they injected. And a long time ago, I have to look this up and then post it later. I did an interview with the guy who was head of the Lindex, who came in as an engineer to Second Life, and then he ran the entire financial operation until 5 years ago or so. And he said, it's literally, I mean, it's like managing a medium-sized country, the economy every day. And you wake up and you're sweating, you feel you're dying of a heart attack, and then you inject a little bit of money and stabilize it. Uh,
you
yeah,
taper.
yeah.
Right.
And the thing is that there is a delay in payouts. So to my knowledge, Linden Lab does not, and nor do they claim that they have the entire assets in dollars handy. So if everybody's cashing out on Monday, that they would be able to pay people. I don't think that they would be able to do that, quite frankly.
But
But
but the
I don't
same
know.
is true. But the same is true for the big Alibaba money market fund, because if you're $4 trillion worth of short-term treasuries and bonds, you're a whale, right? And if you
Hmm.
start selling shit, the value of that stuff will go down. So it's just, if you become that big, you move the market. So there's lots of issues there, and
Hmm.
um, and the sort of the Western equivalent of this Alipay fund is Tether, as I mentioned, and there's a lot of people that sort of have the have the theory, including um, some prosecutors in the Southern District of New York who say that Tether isn't backed.
Mm.
It's like 60 billion dollars worth of coins right now, and they say it's not 100% backed, but more like 5%. So there's stuff going on here that makes Bernie Madoff look like
Hmm.
an amateur.
Like a pickpocket on the boardwalk, stealing little pocket watches or whatnot.
Right.
Um, y- uh, I brought up a slide here that I don't understand. This is from yesterday's Twitter war. Bitcoin, shitcoins, gold, fiat. There's a horse, and the horse looks very
What does
realistic
that
on the.
mean?
It's I don't know. This is a guy with the username Nadi Hodler, and let's not waste time in explaining what hodl means. It's interesting. I learned it from your book. All this stuff is super interesting. This is a drawing where the horse from left to right, uh, the where it says Bitcoin, the horse looks very realistic. Then shitcoins, the horse looks less um, drawn in detail, and then gold, it looks like hand drawn, and then on the right side is fiat, and it looks like a drawing of a 3-year-old. So I have no idea what that means, but the guy tweeted it in my little Twitter war yesterday with La Bitcoinera. He says Bitcoin isn't the scheme; it's a life raft. And again, I really don't want to make fun of these folks because La Bitcoinera here, she said, I had a spending problem, but because I was just like most Americans with poor wages. This is her tweet. That is until I read the Bitcoin standard and I started buying what I could over 5 years ago. I understood money, I understood purchasing power, and as an immigrant, I understand better. And then I think I lost the continuation. I understood better than anybody else how to operate this, I guess. And so she is successful with her investment. And again, as we established earlier, more power to her. Um,
And I mean, someone
yeah,
here in the chat says, "How is this different from the stock market?" And
yeah.
I, mean, I have to say, when I was I know about 20, yeah, 22, 23 years ago, way before I was writing fiction. I was a stock market reporter, and I started in '99. So you remember that, maybe party like it's 1999.
Hmm.
All the Nasdaq highs, and in Germany it was the so-called new market, and then it all came crashing down, and just like sort of the last 2 years before it came crashing down, uh, the frenzy and the people getting into the market, and even when the market was clearly overvalued, there were all these stock market analysts saying, "No, no, there's a way to go," and you had what we called in Germany the Hausfrauenhaus, that is sort of the stock market for the housewives, which is a little pejorative, I think, a little derogatory. But what was
Hmm.
meant was, of course, that a lot of people who had never invested in stocks or treasuries or anything before suddenly put like their kitchen sink into this. And this is what is, I think, also scary about Bitcoin. There's a lot of people that say, "Yeah, I've never invested in stocks, but now I've learned about Bitcoin, and I've put my entire inheritance into Bitcoin." And if all these people get wiped out, it's not going to be pretty.
Hmm.
I mean, the Greg
Me,
Hollisters of the world will abide.
survive, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean you're making a good point because Shyla, I don't know if Shyla is still with us. She does research, and we have a pre-show meeting, and Shyla was saying something really interesting. Aside from when she said, "Well, I've been looking into this for days now, and I understand much less than I did in the beginning." I mean, it's complicated, it's a vast topic, it's fascinating. But Shyla also said, when I mentioned the volatility again, she says, the retirement system, at least in the US, is all tied to the stock market. So it's super volatile. And I think she puts the finger on a huge problem. So, this is not, I mean, this is not something that can be stable or give people the security to live a life with no anxiety. I think that contributes to the all around anxiety if your retirement is tied to that. In Germany, it's just the Riester-Rente, but the 401k system in the US, it just I frankly I throw this into the same bucket as frankly a Ponzi scheme. It's not something that you want to build your society on.
I think one of the ironies of Bitcoin going from, um, I mean, really going up from $5,000 or $6,000 2 years ago to around $50,000, which is a huge, uh, which is a huge rise. Has to do with the loose monetary policy of the central banks, especially the Fed and the ECB. And I think it's a great irony that the Bitcoin people say, ah, the euro and the dollar, those fiat currencies, they are shit and they will crumble and they're printing too much money. When at the same time, I mean, the reason that Bitcoin is going up so much is that a lot of investors, be they small investors or big investors, just have so much, well, maybe only big investors. Big investors have so much free cash on their hands and they don't know what to do with it that they start investing in crypto because everything else has been kind of taken. There is no more. Um, there is no more yield in the other stuff, so they're going in there and it's going up. And it's as soon as sort of there's inflation and monetary policy is getting tighter again, uh, that it will drop again. I
Well,
think.
I,
I don't know. Maybe it's going up to a million. Who
as
knows? But there's a lot of loose money, and that's going into crypto.
as the timekeeper, I have to rein it in here a
Yeah,
little bit. Again, this is really this is a vast topic, but I think it's very, very important when you discuss this and when you look at it is to keep two things apart, which is we just started talking about retirement. I mean, we're talking about luxury problems of winning in whatever whatever you call it, a game or the stock market. There are millions of people around the world. They just want to have a secure basic income in their retirement and not worry about every day and look at the stock ticker if they can keep the lights on or or have food for them or their kids. I mean, those are problems that I really don't think any of
absolutely.
this stuff will solve. Um, now, yeah, we had another reading. We also had a reading scheduled for Drone State. We have to skip that one. It's
Yeah,
an
right.
excellent book, and it's here on the table. And Drone State is available in English. Let me ask you, how does this work with translation? Your publisher is shopping this around now. What do you think the Americans when a German comes and writes something in the world of tech in Silicon Valley and also LA, will they go like, "Oh my God, we can do this much better. Why would we translate this?"
Um, I guess it depends. If it's unbelievable and it's shit, and if they think it looks like this was clearly done by someone who's very far away from all these issues, then they won't. Um, but there's not, on the other hand, if it's well done, then they probably might. But the thing is, just apart from whether it's about crypto or sci-fi or what have you, uh, it's very hard for not just for German, also for French or Italian or Spanish authors to break into the Anglo-Saxon market, both into the UK market
Right.
and the US market. Um, and that is because, I mean, this the sort of the curmudgeony answer some people might give you is it's just because the Americans that are so jaded and they're not interested in anything that happens outside of their country. But I think that's not true. I think it's uh, simply a matter of fact that both the British and especially the Americans have so many amazing authors
Mhm.
that, I mean, why look elsewhere? There is so much good stuff that sort of the demand. If you're in Portugal or if you're in Germany, then the number of authors you have is of course much more limited. So
Right.
so you look abroad more.
This
And
is a
there's
really good point.
so much talent in especially in the US that the demand is not that high, it seems. And I keep I keep kicking the people at my publisher's office sort of in the chin and say, "Come on, why aren't you selling more foreign rights?" But then you hear about a guy who's, I don't know, sold 3 million books in Germany or 5 million, and is kind of a household name, and even he doesn't have a single English translation. So
Right.
it's difficult.
I think you're spot on. The market is really saturated with their own stuff, and it has nothing to do with the quality, even the subject matter. Because I would argue that, I mean, to my knowledge, the way you approach this subject matter, the way you sort of put all these issues into a really yummy, fast-moving thriller narrative. To my knowledge, I read a lot. I mean, this doesn't mean that I know everything, but I haven't come across something that looks at the Bitcoin phenomenon. We haven't even talked about blockchain, the underlying protocols, but also that kind of dynamic. I mean, really the international implications of financial technology in that kind of context. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is, of course, also I've heard this sort of a secret. The thing that some people do is because one thing that even sort of the Americans are interested in is dark Scandinavian thrillers.
Hmm.
So I've heard there's German and Italian and French authors that get a Scandinavian sounding nom de lettre, so nom de plume, so so to have better chances to sell their stuff.
Uh-huh. Well, maybe you should have
Thomas
had like a
Hillenbrandson or something. I should add a
no,
son
but
to my
also
yeah.
also the crypto stuff. Why can't that happen in Bavaria, in the countryside? I know it couldn't because it makes no sense. I'm answering my own question. Like some guy on the farm goes like, I'm gonna invent a global payment system, and yeah, the German investors are right there giving him the money to do that. Now
I
that
mean, that's like it's
that would
changed
be
with the
speculative
with
fiction.
the pandemic, but like 3 years ago, if you went into a small village in Bavaria and went to the local pub and you asked them whether you could pay card,
Yeah. Oh,
they would have
absolutely.
looked like
Yep.
at you like,
Yep.
what? What kind of card? Only cash.
Only cash. Oh my God, we have a heckler running here in the back, and Greg is saying the name that you should use is Thomas Vasa Kneckenbröt. Um, okay,
Smørrebrød, rem tem tem pem. Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you, Tom. This was really, really awesome. Last question: what are you reading? Just one title. I know because you gave an interview with the local paper that you don't read a lot of fiction. Um, you don't?
Um, on vacation, I have to read so much stuff that normally I don't have a lot of time for fiction. But I'm currently reading Luna New Moon. That's a three-part sci-fi novel set on the moon, and it's kind of like
Ian
um,
McDonald.
yeah, it's kind of like Game of Thrones on the moon, I would say, kind of.
Ian
And
McDonald.
it's awesome. It's awesome. I like it a lot.
Ian McDonald is coming on the show in July next year,
Oh
so
wow,
we'll
yeah,
have you, and then you can heckle him on stage or whatever.
excellent.
We'll make up some stuff.
Yeah, make
Uh,
some moon jokes, right?
Folks, if thank you, audience. If you want to share what you're reading, please put that as a comment on my YouTube channel on the book club trailer. The credit slides, I have to roll them. The email address is slbookclub@draxtor.com. Shala, if you could put the link to the book trailer into the local chat. There's so much wonderful comments here. I can't get to all these comments, folks. We really got to wrap it up right now. Or Linden Lab, who they are providing their social media channels. They're gonna call me and say, "What's up? We thought the show is only 1 hour. We're 90 minutes." Tessa here is mentioning all the scams and stuff like that. We haven't gotten into all this kind of stuff. I recommend Tom's book, of course, but I also recommend David Sherrard's Attack of the 50-Foot Blockchain, where he kind of chronicles the ups and downs of Bitcoin. The show is every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Pacific time. 12 o'clock Second Life time is the same as Pacific time. And the show is produced by myself, Isabel Sharon, and Shyla the Super Gecko. The sets are built by Ruby. Ruby, an amazing job. I don't think she had time to read the book, so she had to rely on my descriptions. We have a lot of Easter eggs here. We have Rust in Peace by Megadeth, one of the best albums. That Tom put into this book. Also here on the floor somewhere, Werner Vinge, True Names gets a shout out in the book. Also really important must read novella. Special thanks to Marianne McCann. Special thanks to Brett and Patch from Linden Lab. Arden Schwartzman, I think, is in the audience today. AJ McDowell. Please drop your Linden dollars, drop your virtual money into the tip jar in the back here. I see a lot of tips are coming in. These tips go to the volunteer team. We have a lot of sponsors. Sponsoring means they give us their stuff. They give us their big man cave mansions and all sorts of things. And the set will this location will stick around. We're not going to dismantle it. So you can always go here. You can click on the books. It will give you more information about Tom on his website, and Tom will also be in the gallery of authors, the floating gallery, which is on island number 1. We are currently on island number, lost count, island number 3, I think. Now, next week, we have an author with a German name, but he's actually from Canada, Derek Kuensken. Uh, he is known for his Quantum Magician series of books. That's hard sci-fi. You know what hard sci-fi means? That means there's like 100 pages of describing a technology that doesn't exist. So really boring crap. Don't come to that show. No, please do come, because Derek is awesome, and his latest book is House of Sticks, and that is next Wednesday right here on the Second Life Book Club. Goodbye, everyone.